Dun 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 dun. I think, therefore I am. But, right? That makes sense. Yes. Hold on. Okay, the observer. The observer's paradox. One of the most straight up interesting ideas about reality is the idea of yourself. Yourself. Wow, you emerged. You're here. But why are you here? Simple, simple. Okay, hold on. No, easy to describe. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you're here, depending on the time period. If you lived in an earlier time period, just 300 years ago, there would be no explanations for why it's all happening that you could easily convey to another person, and through deep understandings of mathematics, deep understandings of all the physical observations we've made over the multiple hundred years, all adding up to what it is now, you couldn't. There would be no common ground. You couldn't be like the single cell or the reproduction cycle or the mechanisms of biology. Maybe 400 years ago. But basically, and then like beyond that, those studies might have been evolving, sure. But then what about the universe at large? Yeah, you had the animals and the biology, and that was very unexplainable, but sure, we can make grounds there. By the 1800s, by 1700s, I'm pretty sure a lot of we knew that organs existed. There was stuff you could look at. But then what about the larger universe around you? You couldn't make sense of that. You couldn't make sense of what it all means. We can't even make sense of it today, but we're at the point where we could describe why we're here today. Very simply, the history of the nation, the people that were in it, and even the science about why you exist. Is there a reason? No. No. Other than the reason you subscribe to, right? And the reason that you could subscribe to in the modern day and age is all the sciences leading to the unmagical universe. There's two ways to really think of it, isn't there? A magical universe where your experience is arising from something. Well, we're not even going to get there. We're going to start with the idea of the science. The science explains how your experience arises. The brain, the eyes, the senses, the coordination of all the neural patterns. Your experience is an illusion from the eyes of science. Just a whole bunch of stuff configured in a way that gives rise to the idea of self. But does that idea of self transfer from where you are? No, it's just their locally centered illusion happening. Should you even experience anything at all? Should there really be an active participation in reality at that point? Or could this reasoning, this unmagical reasoning, it's gotten to the point where you could look at it as how could anyone be real? How could anyone actually be a self-driven organism? Okay. And there is explanations for that. All the multicellular parts that are working in tandem, all the states of it all, the averaging of it. You can look at the brain chemistry and be like, there's this much dopamine, there's this much serotonin, these parts of the brain release this much at this timing. There's all this stuff that's very inherent to you. There's a self-identity locked into your structure of what you are, and it gives rise to the individual expression that you feel, the here and now. And it all just works together to create you. And beyond that, there doesn't need to be an argument about why you experience anything, because the physical mechanisms do the work for us. If you go brain dead and we can't talk to you, we're going to assume it's because of the mechanisms in your head. We're going to make the assumption that like you no longer exist. Maybe your experience has been altered so dramatically it's not the same as ours, technically. It's something else. So that's what the science gets at, the idea of the state of the self giving rise to the illusion of the self. I think, therefore I am. But if you think that you're a watermelon, if you're some schizophrenic who has like crazy ideas, you're like, at that point, doesn't the science of the day win out? Doesn't it look like the average organism that has a cognitive expression that makes sense with the real world is just like the perfection of millions of years of evolution, and the frontal lobe getting as advanced as it has? And at some point, I think, therefore I am, is really just a circle. It's just a circular thing. And that's really just the paradox. However, does that really make sense? Does that really seem like the answer? I think, therefore I am is a really compelling argument. Here you are. You think, therefore you are. You can say that you think. But people experience thinking differently. Some people think not with visuals. Some people don't think with words. Some people, I kind of feel this way. Like I have all my senses in my imagination. I can hear, I can smell faintly, I can imagine sight, I can imagine voice, I already said that. I can imagine taste, I can imagine tactile, kind of. It's all there in my imagination, but some people have to organize their thoughts with less. They don't have as many creative, active parts of the brain organizing stuff so that they have an imagination that gives rise to that experience. So again, to the scientific approach, everyone's experience is an arisen illusion out of the brain. You can't be more than your brain is, and we can see what it looks like from the outside. We can examine it and make predictions on what you would report as your experience, is the scientific idea. But for most of human history, that was nowhere near the idea, okay? The state of you and the state of your spirit were different. And that's so easy to come to the conclusion of, I think, therefore I am. There's no other obvious answer. The spirit must be a part of the natural world. And the spirit, that's obviously magic. Now we're trending into magic. Because science wouldn't say there's a spirit. The only way science says there is none. Spirit is like the intentional activity of an individual through the perspective of what they were in life. And science just says, yeah, that doesn't carry over in any manner. It's just the energy expressing itself through the brain, and then one day your identity ceases, and then you go back to the natural world, which is your experience goes to nothing. Right. Which, that's not as scary as it sounds. Your experience going to nothing is literally like, you don't even know that there's nothing happening. Like, the idea that you're like, oh, I mourn the loss of myself, it doesn't even exist. In a blank slate of nothingness, yeah, you don't even have to worry about that. Or you could subscribe to the idea of the spirit. Now, why would that even be possible in this day and age? How could you even think magic would be real? How could you even think of the magical universe? What was the magical universe really, beyond the idea of a spirit, beyond the idea of like, oh, the illusion is real, like, the idea of myself, all the multicellular organisms interacting, like all the parts of my brain, it gives rise to me. But like, wait, what am I trying to say? But more than that, more than the idea of like my body and my spirit are connected, and if my body gets damaged, then my spirit has less influence over the world, but I'm not damaged. I guess that's the idea of the magical soul. And it seems obvious because you have the big problem of the mind and matter. That's essentially what the I think therefore I am issue really is. It's like, how can you have an experience if everything is matter? Where does the mind arise from? Like, how is the illusion so strong? How? Because I mean, if you have some system turn into life, what gets assigned to that life? I guess that's from the scientific question. Like, they say it's just there is no life. The thing that's forming into life is driven by the mechanisms of its underlying chemical components and how that works within the natural world. So, case closed. Yet here you are. Here you are in this universe experiencing it. And there is no answer to that. There is actually, so the science doesn't have an answer, and the magical side just offers the magic as the answer. I guess science has the answer in the sense that, for real, don't believe your lying eyes. You don't really exist. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, yeah, the idea of a conscious mind is, I don't think they have an answer for it. I don't think anyone. I mean, they can locate the brain structure. They're like, oh, if we snip this, oh, you're gonna be a drooling idiot. You won't be here. So we win. Like, we've explained it. We've explained how matter and the mind are interlinked. No. So there's no answer to the mind-matter problem, the paradox of the observer, the brain being able to sort out its own internal logic, its own narrative of what's happening to it. So, yeah, the observer. So what's the magical side of things? Okay, well, there's been a lot of human history, and there's been a lot of ideas about what the magical universe would look like. What a universe not based in the scientific understandings, or I guess a better way to say it is that all observable phenomenon is ordained by higher powers, higher forces. Like, we look at it, it's kind of like the last video, top-down emergence. The fact, but not really. But it's just, yeah. The magical universe is the idea that, like, well, yeah, it's just the magical universe. But it follows a series of rules. It's about, like, the observer and the side of reality that can't be, that's not a part of reality. Like, it doesn't follow the same rules as we do. Like, that's the idea of the magical universe. There are rules that are in shift. Or like, rules can be manipulated. Reality can turn out differently. There's different ways to do things that don't match normal causality. Like, you do a ritual and then the thing that you're hoping for turns out to happen. And, there's all the explanations about why it happened, and yet you assume the ritual is what made it happen. That's the magical universe. Like, causality out of belief. Like, your belief of what the rules are going to make them manifest. And then you fill in you fill in everything that happens to you under that perspective. You look at it through that lens. Almost like science. Almost like science. Like when you go to science, you're basically like, okay, no magic in the universe. I have a view of what's happening. Let me make it real. Let me work under the assumption that there's no magic and I'll find the answer. But what if the universe was magic? And the answer, you're going to find the answer looking like magic. Wouldn't that be quantum? Wouldn't that be quantum physics? The idea that underneath everything that looks so deterministic, so understandable, it fits an idea of how the world works, and there's no major shift in your ideas. You're getting closer and closer to the truth. You're filling in the blanks. You're getting closer to the answer. And then you find quantum. You find that, when we go to the moon, when we think about biology, when we think about the macro world, underlying it is a world of fucking chaos. It's just out of control. Like, basically, the rules are so different from how the macro world assembles. It almost, you start to wonder, you hear about the fields, the energy fields that exert from matter, and you wonder how. Okay, yeah, those are the explanations. Like, this is what we found, but what? Quantum physics, where a particle can go through, the double slit experiment, where they send the beam of particles, and it acts like it goes through both of the doors, anyway, it's a long explanation, or a really weird phenomenon in reality. Anyway, it doesn't represent the macro world. It doesn't represent the daily experience. It's like if a bunch of priests were going to delve into a religion, and then they come back and they tell you, oh yeah, this is why Zeus did this to this person, and this is what we learned from it, and this is why the world works this way, because this god did this, and that eternal, now we're forever cursed to be like this. Or whatever. It's basically that. The scientists delve into their research about the observable phenomenon that we see, and then they bring back to us more and more details. And it fits. Okay, I'm not giving science enough credit. Science is really a religious... No. It grabs all the details. It grabs all the facts that work within reality. But that's what I'm saying. You see... The magical side of things is the idea that consensus might matter a lot. You might get a group of people in a circle to do a ritual, and then it happens. And then science is over centuries, we figured out tons of truths about the universe. But okay, roll the clock 3,000 years, or go back to the Egyptian era. What they discover, when their society rose, diving into the science of gods, what we need to do to make our society prosperous. When those people really followed the rules, when they thought the religion was there, it's couldn't that be the equivalent to the science today? Not, but it drove them leaps and bounds. Not really. Anyway. The point is, I think therefore I am. It's not answerable by science yet, and it's not answerable by magic, unless you just accept them at their word. Right. But then there's more to the observer paradox. The idea of knowing all, okay, when I said the guy who thinks he's a watermelon, right? The guy who thinks he's Napoleon. Well, what about you, the guy who thinks, reality is here, and all the rules that you think are here? How much, there's maybe a scale of sanity, a scale of organization of beliefs that you hold, and they're productive in your life. But maybe it's on a sliding scale, and maybe, there are definitely truths that are not relative to you, but there are things that you know, And you're flawed. Everyone is flawed. So your knowledge of the universe is incomplete. But when your brain goes to make an assessment of what is happening to it, it needs to complete the message. It has to, in the closed loop circuit that it is, needs to make some decision. Some decision about what comes next. What I feel comes next. What I think comes next. Like the brain has to do that. And when it does, it's able to, in an illusionary sense, complete the circuit, make you feel like, you know what, I'm not really that sure about an idea, but this is the idea and this is the level of unsurety I have about what the outcome is. It always kind of falls into your brain really tricking you into like, I can take this unknown and I think I know that the unknowns are going to happen at this magnitude to me. Like I don't know this to this degree, or I know it to this degree. It's kind of wild. And if that's what's happening, if you always have to make the closed loop assertion, and your truth is always kind of like incomplete, all your decisions are based on like half truths. With the knowledge that you know nothing, like you don't really know what's going on, like you can't know why you're here. You can't even know why the matter creates the illusion that you're here, and why you're not just not here. And there's like the question about why don't you just exist but not feel it? Like the idea that matter could organize into a living thing, sure, that makes sense, but why do you feel it? Why would life feel anything unless all matter felt something? And that's kind of the spiritual universe, the idea of consensus within the matter that is there. We all believe this. We all believe that. Like, oh, they don't believe us, but we together believe this. And then through our action about our belief, we try to create the outcome that we think we can create. And yeah, that's the idea of the magical universe. It just kind of piggybacks off like a whole bunch of like cognitive illusions and the uncertainty, like not knowing what the world is, not knowing why we're really here, and letting all the, I don't know. Some people, like if you're in the science field, if you're in science-oriented land, no magic, then all your emotions and all the things that you feel, like there's a very reasonable way it happens, why your experience is one way or another. But if you're magical, then yeah, you assume that you have like a divine soul that's trapped in a mortal coil, and the way you interact with the world is through the mortal soul, the mortal body, and it can be flawed, but that doesn't change who you are. Or it does, it makes it harder to act out in the world around you. But yeah, you yourself will persist is the idea. How so? I don't know. Well, I do know. In their point of view, it's however they think it's going to persist. The afterlife, reincarnation, blah, blah, blah. That's probably the experience that will come next for the magical soul-thinking person. That's their assumption. And yeah. And then the science assumption is you just vanish. And that's the observer paradox, I guess. I think, therefore I am, but the brain-matter connection, we don't know why it's there. Scientifically, we don't know. It really just leaves the error, the feeling of, it could just be, yeah, I don't know. It could be whatever. I think the other thing is that we confuse the complexity of the reality around us into our own narrative. Like we use the wider world to, for the people who believe in the science track, we use the wider world and all the things within it to diminish our role in the wider world or in our world. To use it to be like, yeah, do you see all the other stuff going on? We're not so special. And then, like, that's a convincing argument, but it's like working around the I don't know what to do with the I think, therefore I am statement. I'm going to use, like, the projection that all this doesn't, like, all this is just not, like, random, or it all came together by accident. It's all just a miracle statistically that I exist. But now I'm going to go get a cheeseburger, and on my way to get that cheeseburger, a weird song came on the radio that reminded me of something. It's like there are moments where there's the coincidences, right? The events that are like within the brain paradox. You can think, yeah, your brain is going to, in a closed loop circuit, look at the world and relate it to itself. So there's no meaning there. You hear a song on the radio, you're ready to throw away any deeper meaning it might hold to you. Like, it means that to you, but you're not going to assume magical universe. Because then you can look outward and be like, statistically, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's the whole world around me. It diminishes my narrative of me being special. That's the other thing. To think that you're not special helps with the whole, everything is just a product of reality and all the rules in reality. But, yeah. So that's the observer paradox. That's the I think, therefore I am, like, casting all of humanity into confusion forever. Just causing us to be like, what's real? I don't get it. No, nothing is real. There's no God. Oh, but you know what? I think there is God. Just all this stuff. I think there's God because it was sunny today and I needed a sign from the heavens and that was just what I needed. It's like, is it real? Is it not real? Is it real? Is it not real? You live your day-to-day life. The brain paradox is going to force its way onto you. There are going to be moments where the closed-loop brain and all the science that explains why a coincidence is not all that special will happen to you. And emotionally, it's going to feel strong. It's going to be like, wow, that made me feel things. That made me feel like the universe was talking to me in a way that, like, made me feel special for a second. But that can't be real. Let me shrug that off because everyone around me has told me that can't be real. So everyone experiences the luck, the idea of, because of the closed loop circuit, you're going to experience it. At least from the scientific idea, like, that's going to be the default answer for what magic is. It's just a failure in the cognition. But again, multicellular organism, where do you come from? Why do the cells organize into one experience? And sure, you may be like, oh, I'm brain damaged, so my average experience changed. And look, that means the cells played a role in my ability to be here. But it's like, I don't even know. I really don't even know. Like, physically, that would be the case, but yeah, it seems like it's still up for debate, even in modern times. Like, the idea of magic and science, what's real and what's not real. It's easier to be like, magic ain't real. I don't see it happen in my life, other than the moments where I can throw it away as a coincidence, because it's just a misinterpretation of my brain cognition. But yeah, I don't know. You definitely experience it, and you have to make the decision on whether it means anything to you. And that's the other thing. They want to say there's no magic because what meaning could you make of it? What can you do with those moments where you feel magical, where things are lining up in a way that's like, the universe is speaking to me. This feels like it feels like top-down emergence. It feels like, not from the below, but from above. Things are influencing me to feel like it's more magical than not. So we all run into that. And, you can explain it through the science, and you can explain it through the idea that you're magic, and you can't really know the answer. You can't. You can't really know why matter creates mind. That's really all there is to say on that.